Pot in My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hey everyone, and welcome. This week is just me, and we've been on a little bit of a break for a few weeks, and we're back. And the date today is November 5th, 2024. Pretty big day in not just America, but the world. But this podcast is really just sort of going to be me talking about some of the things that I've been ruminating on for a little while, of just kind of like a smorgasbord of some stuff, a brain dump, if you will. So the first thing I want to talk about today actually is this podcast. So it has been such a fun journey for me to get to do this, get to meet all of these incredible people that I've met along the way. And I just, think back in Canada, we just, finished our Thanksgiving earlier in October. And the American Thanksgiving is coming up on the 24th, I believe. And I really like to ground myself and just really practice gratitude. I do it all year long. It's a part of my almost daily routine. And, I want to practice that gratitude and make sure that I am just really being grateful for everything. And so one of the things that I'm super grateful for is that I got out of my own way last year in December, took the leap. And as you know, on December 31st of last year, I recorded my very first podcast. And this is episode 41. And it has been such an incredible journey, and one that I'm going to continue doing, with lots of great interviews scheduled coming up, and ones that we're looking at reformatting and, that sort of thing. I also recently was able to acquire a little help on the editing side. So this is going to start very soon. And some of the social media parts. And it's really interesting. So that's something I want to talk about today. So a few of the things that I really want to speak about are gratitude, right? As we are in between, say, Canadian and American Thanksgiving, and what gratitude really does. And I think for a really long time, and I say a really long time, I say about since my cat passed away in April, which I'm not sure if I spoke about on the podcast before. My cat, Nima, came into my life as a rescue. She was told, or I was told, that she had about 6 months to live. She was very symptomatic with feline leukemia. And I didn't want a foster cat. I wanted a kitten, And I saw her on Facebook one day, and just her face, and she was so cute, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, she's so cute. What am I going to do? And then I was like, nope, I want a kitten. And I scrolled onwards and moved on until, I think it was like a Thursday or a Friday, until the following Monday, where throughout the whole weekend, I had literally been nonstop thinking about her. So I was like, okay, well, she's currently living in a basement because she's sick and she can't be around other cats. She only has 6 months. I could take her, give her lots of love, make sure she doesn't know hunger or pain or fear until she passes away. And in the end, I adopted her and brought her in. And they told me that it would take a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, for the cat to warm up to me. It's probably best I don't, go after the cat, try and get loves and snuggles, let her come to me. So I was prepared, right? I was prepared to, when she came to the house, to just kind of do my own thing and wait till she came to me. And I think she got there at around 11 in the morning. It was maybe 6-ish, 7-ish in the evening. I was folding clothes on my bed, and little Miss Mima traipses into the room and then hops on the bed, walks up pretty much right in front of me, falls back, and spreads both all her paws. And was like, rub my belly. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, this is pretty quick. So I give her belly rubs and we bond. And, still thinking that that was going to be a 6-month stay, if you will. And April 29th, when she passed away, I had her for 8 years, just a month or 2 more. 8 years and 2 months. So she lived a long time. And I always like to think of her as a reminder of what love can do in a person's life and how love can completely change someone's whole perspective, their health, their mental well-being, their situation, everything. And I think a lot of people so greatly desire to be loved, but I think often we forget that to be loved, we must love. I think that's kind of my thought process on it is if we can't get love externally, can we focus in on love on ourselves and love outwardly? And Mima was a really great example of what a loving home, a safe home, a full belly can do for someone whose odds are stacked up against them. And not gonna lie, I probably didn't talk about it on my podcast because I think I knew, right? I definitely knew that she was gonna die when I got her. And as much as you think you're prepared for it, you're not. And yeah, it's been a rough while to grieve her and miss her and realize how empty my home is without her. And she was my buddy, right? So she was always there. She was always around. And yeah, so I miss her a lot. I believe that she's in heaven with my grandfather and probably chatting Jesus's ear off. That's what I think. She was a very chatty cat. So grieving, working, all of these things, I was kind of just like not myself for a while. And then, 2024 has been a really incredible and wonderful year for me, mentally, physically, professionally, all of those things. And I just kind of was in this sort of state of discontent. And it was like at the consulting role that I was at, I was like, you know what? I'm not making my worth, despite it being that I am making more money than I made before, right? Not making my worth, constantly like what am I going to do in this year, and how am I going to grow this, and how am I going to make this, and all of these things. And I just was really struggling. It was just kind of a crotchety place. A few weeks back now, being in this cantankerous place, if you will, I don't like to say unhappy, but discontented place. Just on, thinking I can have more, do more, be more, whatever. It was a Sunday or a Saturday, I don't know actually, to be quite honest with you. And I think I was reaching that pinnacle of sort of burnout, discontentment, all of that sort of thing. And then I was like recognizing that, okay, something's got to give. Like you are in a kind of a crusty mood all the time. You're having fights with people in your head. You're creating scenarios in your head that make zero sense. I'm a quilt maker. There's a quilt, right here. I'm not a great quilt maker. It's just something I really love doing. I had a few quilts I wanted to sort of work on for Christmas, and it's feeling like the pressure and all of this sort of thing. So in this moment on the weekend, whatever day it was, Saturday or Sunday, I just said, like I was feeling the pressure, feeling it stacked up. And I just said, you know what? Screw it. I need to do something for me. I need to just forget about work, forget about what I should be making or what I could be making or any of that sort of thing. Forget about the quilts or the things that I have to do for other people at this moment. What is the one thing that I can do for me right now to make me feel grounded, to bring me in the present moment, and to just sort of help me reset, maybe? And so the only thing that does that really, without question, and works every time, is reading. And so Frida McFadden is my new sort of fave author, and I'm almost done reading her entire library. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go read a Frida McFadden. But one thing about Frida McFadden is she writes really good suspense thriller books. And I don't know if I could almost feel like my nervous system that day was like, I don't know if I can handle that. Like that's not what I need, if you will. I remember stepping outside, thinking about, well, what am I going to read? I want to read something. I want to sit back on the couch and I want to just lose myself in the book. And when I do that, what happens always is I come back into my body, into my current and present mind, and I get grounded because I'm thinking of the book as I'm reading it and like analyzing different things. It's just a very like brings me into the moment book exercise. So didn't want to read a suspense thriller. I didn't want to read anything that was, say, too heavy. No, I decided I was going to read always my best choice. A month prior, 6 weeks prior. I'm really bad with dates, by the way, but I had this guest on my show. His name is Matt O'Neill. He has a podcast called Good Mood Revolution. And he had sent me an email a couple weeks prior to that and said, he has his advanced copies and he'd really like to send me one, which I thought was absolutely incredible. And I gave him my address and he sent me a copy of the book. Now, the book, I got it. It was sitting on my table, on the corner of my table, closest to my treadmill. And as I was walking back into the house, I see the book. And I said, well, this wonderful human being sent me this book to read. I should read it and I'll give it a shot. Like, it was sort of still work in my brain or doing something for someone else, but I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. I'll give it an hour and see how that went. Well, this is the book. It's glossy, so I think some of the, but it's Good Mood Revolution. And I sat down with this book. Bring it back a little bit so you can see it better. I sat down with this book and I finished it in one sitting. It was almost as if the universe knew exactly what I needed. This book also has a blurb and an endorsement from Marianne Williamson, who happens to be the author of my most favorite quote of all time, which is Our Greatest Fear. It was adapted for Nelson Mandela's 1994 inauguration speech. It's been shown up a lot of times. Very few people actually know that it was written by Marianne Williamson, but it was, and it's incredible. The book was the answer to all my needs in that moment. So reading grounds me, centers me, and brings me into the present. This book talks about just that. It's called The Good Mood Revolution, and it says igniting the power of conscious habits. And we're going to have Matt O'Neill back on the show in the coming weeks before the end of the year to talk about this book. So I don't want to give too much away because I've made notes to have a conversation with him. But it is coming out December 17th. So you can get it on Amazon. I wish I could get a less, there we go. Maybe that's better. It's coming out on Amazon December 17th. And it talks about the 8 negative emotions. And What I love about this book is that there's a lot of vulnerability on Matt's side in this book about his experience with those 8 negative emotions and how they shape certain aspects and components of his life and how he was able to move through them. And then it talks about the 8 positive emotions. And these are core emotions and how you can move yourself through those 8 negative up into those 8 positive. And what was really interesting, I will say this, is that I would say about 65% of this book it was information I already knew, maybe a little bit more. However, it wasn't information that was readily available to me over the past, say 6 months. And it wasn't information that I had read in such a beautifully crafted way and have it presented in a way that took me from that sort of dark spot where my brain wasn't functioning, where my heart wasn't functioning, all of those things, and brought me into a space of deep gratitude and peace and just all around gratefulness, to be honest. So what I would actually recommend is go, if you can, pre-order Good Mood Revolution. If you can't, purchase it on December 17th, and we are going to have Matt O'Neill back on the show to talk about this book. And we're going to be right back after these messages.
Life in Stitches by C.K. Sims. Available for purchase in paperback and ebook on all major platforms. Partner today with CK Sims and Pod in My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we had talked about myself this year being one of the best years of my life, but also being a tough year with losing my cat, Lima. And then also how on a random Saturday or Sunday a few weeks ago, I came to sort of a tipping point in my burnout and that sort of thing. And how this book, Good Mood Revolution by Matt O'Neill, totally brought me through that whole process and back up into this wonderful and grateful place. And I've been able to hang on to that gratitude, and I've referenced the book several times. We're going to have him back on the show to talk about this book a little bit more in depth. Look for that episode in the coming weeks before the end of the year. So, gratitude, a big deal. Love is a big deal. One of my key messages on this show right from the beginning is kindness, and how kindness to ourselves as a practice turns into kindness outward. And that comes pretty naturally when you practice kindness to yourself. And it's really important work to do. If you're the type of person who feels like, why me? It's always me, or this is, the story of my life, or, just a lot of, you come to expect that life is going to be crap for you. Start with kindness inwards, and you're going to watch over time your life change into something beautiful and wonderful. I'm a living and prime example of that. And Matt talks about this in a similar way in his book, that we attract what we think, right? We attract what we feel. For 35 years, I played a victim, and on top of that, I had adopted faulty beliefs about myself that became my identity. And because of that, that is what I attracted for 35 years. And it took a big life event that I talked about many times on this show as well to change all that and to sort of jar me into changing my perspective on life and myself, especially within that life. I think if there's anything that we need right now in this world, more than anything, more than is kindness, and recognizing that that kindness starts in here, your kindness to yourself and what that looks like or translates for you. Showing yourself kindness, forgiveness, being humble with yourself, being gentle with yourself, and all of those different buzzwords, if you will, as being just being kindness, being kind to yourself. And I say that kindness is what we need. And the reason I say that is because it's November 24th. November 5th, 2024, I meant to say. It's this huge day in America, but it's not just America. It's a huge day for a lot of people and globally. So this day and how it ends, yes, I have my idea of how I'd like to see it end, my idea of how I think the world needs to have it end, but those are my ideas, right? And what I think right now, more than anything, is that whether it's Kamala or we need to be kind. We need to be kind to ourselves. We need to be kind to our neighbors. We live in this just a very peculiar time, and I'm sure similar situations have happened. But, I don't think there's never been a time before where people have so much access to information. And I'll say information, but I'm going to use it in a very neutral term because I think that there's much actual, true information out there. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, people's opinions that are being taken as truth, people's personal truths being pushed out as truths. There's just so much going on, and we can't escape it. I mean, we can actually. I've done a pretty good job of that. So for my mental health and for my well-being, I had to remove all social media from my phone. I don't find anymore that it's enjoyable. It was something I was spending a little bit too much time on. And I say a little bit too much, but an excessive amount of time on. And what started as sort of a detox has become perhaps a new way of life. And I mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast that I finally received and sort of set up help with the social media side of things, because I know it's one of those necessary things if you want to promote your podcast or your books or yourself or whatever that situation may be. But I don't want to be there, and I don't necessarily want to see everybody's thoughts at the same time, all the time, without being able to say I want to just dial in to say X person or Y person, that sort of thing, when I feel like it. And I mean, if I would rule the world, there would be legislation in place that dictated that any media of any form would be strictly governed in the fact that they could if they were going to report on something, they still have the freedom of the press to report what they want. However, it has to be quantified in the sense that if something is a fact, it will say on screen in a little corner right down here, maybe, that it's a fact. Okay. And there will be penalties if somebody said it's a fact and it's not a fact, right? So there would be some sort of check, some sort of quality. The language would revert back to how news people used to report. Current speculation is that XYZ is involved in this, right? Not reports are that XYZ, because that in itself. Using words that indicate that the information is speculation or hearsay and that it's not a fact, right? That's another thing that we would do. The language would have to change. And then obviously people are going to give their opinions and want to put their own spin on things. But if they do that, then in the same little corner, it has to say opinion. And that is how things would work if I ruled the world. And that legislation would exist globally. Because I think we have to understand that not everything we see, actually probably a very small amount of what we see on the internet or even news, is grounded in fact anymore. And like that's part of the reason I had to get away from social media. It's like I love AI as a tool, for instance, but like we've got people on YouTube putting out trailers to movies that don't exist, like that are not actual movies. I don't know why. Maybe I'm growing into my age, and this is something that bothers me because I'm like, I'll see an Iron Man 4 and I'll be like, oh, that looks so cool. And then you click on it and you immediately can tell that it's like just snippets out of like the 20 odd movies that Iron Man was featured in, which there was quite a number. So stuff like that really irritates me. And it should, fan-based trailer or whatever the situation may be. It's really hard to determine what's official and what's not official anymore. And there's such an influx and overproduction of falsities and speculation that's disguised as fact, and we're just misleading the masses. So, and I'm no better. I'm just a person, right? Just a person on the internet that has a podcast that interviews people. We talk about struggles and triumphs and resilience and kindness and love and all of those things, but I'm still just a person, right? Nothing I say can technically be used as factual information. When I speak, it is of my opinion, my lived experience, my observed experiences, right? But it's not facts. And just because something is my truth does not make it someone else's truth, right? And I think that that's where the kindness kind of circles back, is that as we begin to be kind to ourselves and we show ourselves this as a practice, we start to become very confident in ourselves, in how we feel, and we become a little bit more deeply rooted, and that starts to flow outwards. So when we're thinking of things, we tend to think of them a little differently, right? One of my most valuable lessons is, for me, that never be afraid to admit that you're wrong, or that you don't know, or that you were misinformed. I thought it was this. And then be vulnerable in that moment. That's how I operate in life. I don't think about, I mean, I do. That's not true. As a person, I have anxiety, so I'm always thinking about if what I said was received this way or that way. And I have to really be kind and talk myself down and say, you know what? What's been said has been said. The time has passed. If this was perceived differently than you intended, they are an adult and they can ask you about it, and you can clarify. It took a long time to get there, right? Like it wasn't just something I've always been able to do. I would have obsessed over a 5-word sentence for months. So I had to like track this person down and like, that time 5 months ago when I said this, I'm like, I hope you didn't think that I actually meant this, because what I really meant was this. And like, I'm saying this because these are things that I've already done in my life. So I think the kindness comes from the practice. And when we're kind to ourselves, we become kind outwardly. And right now, today, at this very moment, before we know anything about really who's going to win this particular election, we need to decide right away, regardless of the outcome, when we wake up tomorrow or when we go to bed tonight, whenever we know, we decide that we're going to be kind. We are going to treat people with respect. We are going to treat people as we would want them to treat us. And we're going to not try to dismiss or discredit anybody for feeling the way that they feel. We don't know why people support Trump. We don't know why people support Kamala. We have the surface ideas. They're just our ideas, also speculation. We're not able to ask nearly 300 million people why they're supporting one particular candidate over another. There could be deep-seated reasons why these things are happening that we'll never know. So my goal of this podcast today, and I'm going to put it out, edit it and put it out immediately after I'm done recording, is just to say we have to be kind regardless of outcome. And I think we have to be kind in spite of the outcome. We have to start looking at each other as human beings who deserve love, kindness, and respect. And we have to start giving that same to ourselves, right? Stop trying to find differences in other people and start trying to find similarities. There's so much more that brings us together that we have in common than what sets us apart, right? So I don't know who's going to win tonight. I, like you, have a hope for one particular outcome versus another. That said, when I wake up tomorrow, when I go to bed tonight, or whenever I actually find out the results, I choose to be kind and to love those that I may not understand, but to show them kindness and respect, regardless of their political beliefs. Yeah. So that's my podcast for today. A solo one. I'm in a situation of reorganizing my home. So this is why my background looks a little different. And yeah, so Good Mood Revolution by Matt O'Neill. I will be having him on the show again. Really helps me in a time of internal need. This book, I have some very interesting guests coming up on the show after taking a small break. And you should see a little bit more of the show on social media going forward. So yeah, lots of things to be grateful for and to be excited. And with that, I just remind you all, be kind to yourself and to others. Until next time, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Pod in My Noggin.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.